All right. So, um, thank you so much for joining today. This topic came up as a result of a couple of things. The accreditation of programs, particularly in the state of Michigan, around PA schools is a huge deal. So, we're going to talk a little bit about how we got to where we are today. I really want to address concerns that I'm hearing in my office from students about the risks in applying to PA programs, and to kind of allay some of those risks, allay some of those fears, and also give you a sense of what are some good resources you can use to investigate whether or not it's worth it to you to apply to a specific school. I also want to make sure that you have a plan for next steps as you consider going forward with the cycle. I am presenting without a monitor, but if you want to either raise your hand or drop something in the chat, I will do my best to answer questions as we go along. You may want to take some notes for yourself, but that's up to you. So when I started working and trucking programs, PA programs in the state of Michigan, there were 6. We had Central, Eastern, Grand Valley, University of Detroit Mercy, Western, and Wayne State. And then in the last few years, we've added Concordia, Lawrence Tech, MSU, OU, U of M Flint, which took us to a total of 11 in the state of Michigan. Now that really mirrors kind of what we've seen nationally, which is that in 2014, there were 191 programs, and we are projected to be up at 353 by the end of 2027. Okay, so this is just a huge amount of growth in a relatively short amount of time. It was almost double, right? There is a national organization that is responsible for making sure programs are accredited. And on the upside, it does mean for you as students and future candidates that there are more programs to apply to, but also the National Association has more programs to assess and keep track of. Okay. So they've tried to do that in a couple of ways. They have tried to standardize some of the processes in ensuring program accountability. However, nothing's 100% objective. So there's still some subjective place for raters to kind of think about programs and to like mark programs down. So this is all like a really complex situation that they're trying to navigate on this national accreditation level. And then there's some fallout for you guys, future students. So we're going to talk about kind of the data that they make available to you and how to interpret some of that data. Just turn off the okay. All right. So if you want to take a minute, you can absolutely go ahead and scan this QR code. You could also Google ARC-PA website. It talks about kind of their goals. So the goal of having this national accrediting body is to protect the public and the profession by defining the standards for PA education. Now, every single health profession has a similar board. Med schools have one, dental schools have one, PA or PT, pharmacy. Everybody has an accrediting body. So we've kind of agreed as a country, this is what an individual trained in this field should be able to do. And that protects the public safety, it protects individual safety, but it also means that the programs, when they are looking to train people, can point to kind of guidelines and say, we're doing all the things on this guidelines to really produce the best healthcare professionals possible. All right. So that's one goal. is in defining the standards. The other goal is to ensure that the programs are actually producing the training that they say they are. Okay, so they oversee all of this with this one organization. In the process, they've determined certain levels of accreditation. Okay, we're going to go through them. We'll talk a little bit about the schools in the state of Michigan that fall into each category and how you can proceed as a candidate to kind of continue your own investigation. All right, so we're going to talk about kind of basically 3 statuses. All right. The first status is something called continued accreditation. Now, once a program has become established, as long as they stay in compliance with standards and can prove that they're in compliance with standards, they are awarded continued status. Now, they do reviews every so often. One of the impacts of having all of the explosion of programs nationally is that as standards have changed in accordance with new programs, some older programs might find that they need to raise their game a little bit to meet the status of new programs. That makes sense. Now, right now in the state of Michigan, Eastern Michigan and Grand Valley are both at continued accreditation status. So there's no problems, no concerns at any level with either of those programs. There's also something called provisional, and this is the kind of status that a new program would have. It means that they have plans and the resources to meet the accreditation standards so that everything is in line for them to continue to move forward and get sort of that continued accreditation status, right? The kind of our green light, 2 thumbs up, all right? And they get reviewed frequently. So a program that's a new developing program like Concordia, Lawrence Tech, MSU has frequent visits with the accrediting body to make sure that they are proceeding so that when they open their program, they basically are going to be able to offer the quality education they say they can. They're not going to be defrauding students by taking their money and then not training them, or training students who then can't pass their board exams. So this is a very rigorous process as they go forward. Schools can get in trouble if they are not proceeding the way that the accrediting body wants them to. So that status can be, the provisional status can actually be revoked if the accrediting body does not believe that the program is in a place to kind of deliver on its product, right? Because your education is a product. Okay, so we have continued accreditation and we have provisional accreditation. Right now in the state of Michigan, the schools that are provisional are Concordia, Lawrence Tech, and the new school at MSU's College of Osteopathic Medicine. Okay. This is the big one, right? Probation status. Warning, warning, danger, danger. I've been hearing a lot of conversation around this. Such and such program is on probation, and therefore they've lost their accreditation. It's actually not true. That's one of the big myths I want to kind of break down with you today. Schools that are on probation are still accredited. They can still admit students. They can still graduate students. They can, those students can sit for the national exam. What it means is that ARC-PA has identified some problems, some things that are not aligned with the standards they've established, and then schools have an opportunity to remedy the issues. Again, that gets remedied either by schools submitting documentation. In some cases, there might be a visit from ARC-PA representatives to the campus of the school. So there's lots of methodology to get the program back into good standing. All right. And there's a ton of different reasons that a school might end up on probation. Some of them are very administrative and fairly fixable. If a school had a fine for some reason, if the accrediting body wants some information updated on websites and schools haven't published it on the websites the way that the accrediting body wants them to, that could be a problem. One that comes up a lot, especially as some of these older programs are going up for review, is program assessment. So do they have methods in place to confirm that what they say they're teaching students is actually being taught and retained by students? And are they reporting those results somehow? So again, that's not an issue with the teaching. That's an issue of, are we measuring the teaching and learning? Not whether or not it's happening, but are we measuring that it's happening? Okay. So a program could very easily turn out well-qualified PAs, but if there was no methodology or no record of how they were assessing themselves, how they were self-reflecting and self-evaluating, then they would get in trouble, even though they were training good PAs. All right. There's definitely, I've seen a couple of things as I was looking through some of these websites about documentation of DEI initiatives. So is the school committed to DEI principles, and is there a record of how they're maintaining that? And then we move into things like not enough clinical sites. So is it a program that is accepting, let's say 40 students, but they don't have enough clinical sites for those 40 students to do all the rotations they need to do in their second year? Same thing with preceptors. So preceptors would be, they're basically professional teachers, right? Someone who oversees student learning, but in the workplace. So if they don't have enough preceptors, they don't have enough people who will oversee the students while they get training. That again is an issue because that can prevent students from getting the clinical exposure that they need to. And then low PANCE pass rates. So PANCE is that national board exam that all PAs have to pass in order to get their license. So if a school has a low PANCE pass rate, that can also land them on probation. Okay. Now, this is just a half dozen things that I found as I was looking through, but these are some, just wanted to give these as topics. Now, as you can imagine, some of these things are easy to fix and some of them are not. So for example, an unpaid fine or a website update, is that an easy fix? Just thinking if you want to just pause and consider this for a moment. I'd love it if people were willing to drop in the chat or unmute. Do you think an unpaid fine or a website update, is that an easy fix or something hard to fix?
Probably easy.
Yeah, I would agree. Those are pretty easy things to address, right? I can go on our website right now and change things on our website just like that, right? But what about having not enough clinical sites or low PANCE pass rates? Do those sound like easy things to fix or hard things to fix?
Harder.
Harder, yeah. Those PANCE, you have to sort of, if you've got students who aren't passing the exams, you have to really address kind of what's the underlying issue. If you don't have enough clinical sites or preceptors, you have to identify what's the root cause. You probably will have to expand budget availability to pay more people to be on your staff or to pay, to have contracts with clinical sites. Those are definitely going to be more challenging to remedy. So part of why I want to point that out to you is that it's important to understand that there's a different amount of underlying concern depending on why they got in trouble. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yeah.
So
yes.
We've got our continuing status, which is great. Green light go. Provisional, which you want to keep an eye on those schools. If you're interested in applying on them, you want to keep an eye on them as they go through the process and get fully accredited, which by the way, can't happen until they've graduated their first class. And you also want to keep an eye, but you also want to understand that you can still apply to a school on probation if you are tuned into what's happening. Okay, so here's the schools in the state of Michigan that are on probation. Central, Detroit Mercy, U of M Flint, Western, and Wayne. So out of those 5 programs, 4 of them have been around for a long time. Central, Mercy, Western, and Wayne have been around for a really long time. U of M Flint is a newer program. So, you know, they have different issues, but again, so some of these are programs that have had long-standing reputations for being strong programs. All right, I want to talk about 2 things that happened this application cycle. Again, this is just about educating you to be aware of the risk so that you can make well-informed decisions when you are getting ready to apply. So Western's one of the oldest programs in the country. It's been around since the early 70s. It's over 50 years old. They admitted a class for 2023, 2024, but the report that they got from ARC-PA made them reconsider. So they admitted those students, but did not start that academic school year by enrolling those students. And they have decided not to take applications for 2024-25. So if this is a program that you were interested in, you're going to want to keep a close eye on whether or not they continue. And we'll talk in a minute about how you might track some of that information. Okay. Oakland University had provisional accreditation. And they also admitted a class in 23-24, but did not seat it. And they are not taking applications for next year. And as of right now, they're not listed even at probation status. So I know we had a lot of students here at Wayne State who were very interested in the fact that OU was opening a program. Right now, that's on pause. We do not have any information about how they're proceeding. Basically, the information we have gotten as advisors in the state is that they are kind of considering their options and looking at whether or not they can sort of retool where they are, or if they will decide not to open a program. So, how do you find some of this out as a student? Especially, let's say, if you're looking at programs outside the state of Michigan, which maybe you're with our advising team is not going to be as up to date on as we are about the schools in state. So the site that I had you scan before, the ARC-PA website, looking at the when you look on their website, on their program page, their academic status page, you're going to see a header that looks like this. Okay. It's ranked by state, which is a little annoying on Michigan. You have to go down to like the 3rd page. And you're going to look for the sponsoring institution. So Wayne State, University of Detroit Mercy, whatever. And again, that's all listed alphabetically. It will tell you their current accreditation status. And we're going to show you an example in a minute. And history. So this gives you a good snapshot of where a school is in the accreditation process. So let's take a look at what that looks like as a real example. So here are 2 of our schools. So again, this gives you our state. This gives you the sponsoring institution, so EMU and Grand Valley. This gives you their status, okay? So this tells you that these are continuing accreditation programs and they're not in any sort of difficulty with probation at all. If you want to look at the PDF, which actually outlines every single time they've gone up for review and what the committee found, you can. I wouldn't recommend it. It's a little like going down a rabbit hole. There will be lots of things that may or may not make sense to you. And I hesitate to have you do that just because I think without a lot of training, like I dug through those a little bit. I think without a lot of training, it's hard to understand kind of some of the jargon that's in there, but it is there. It is findable by candidates. And then the other thing, these two columns, these are when they were, this column is when they were first accredited. So, Grand Valley has been accredited for a very long time. And Eastern Michigan is more like, what are we at, 11 years now for EMU? And then finally, and this is also, I think, a very important piece to look at when you are assessing if you want to apply to a school. This is the date of their next review. Okay. So Grand Valley, let's say, they had a review September 24. So that was last month. So their status could change, right? If you are in the application currently and you've applied to Grand Valley, there is a chance that their accreditation could come up for review and there could be a problem. All right. However, Eastern is accredited, has their continuing accreditation through March of 2028. So if you applied to Eastern, there'd be no problem with them going up for review because they, if you were going to apply in 2020, this current cycle or the next cycle, right? So if you were hoping to start, you would be admitted, educated, and graduated before their next review. So 0 risk. Now, I'm not saying that this is the be all and end all, that you should make all your decisions about where to apply based on this. I am saying it's a piece of information to have in your back pocket as you think about where you're going to apply. Okay. Now, the next one has kind of a probation. So here's the schools that are a bunch of the schools that are on probation. What I think is worth pointing out in this screen, again, is that these dates here. So September 25, June 25, March 25. So that tells you these schools are on probation: University of Detroit Mercy, U of M Flint, and Wayne State. And they're being reassessed within the next year. Okay. That's a good piece of information because it will help you decide some things as when you apply. All right. So is it possible? Yes. This is the ARC-PA website, and I can circle back at the end and bring the QR code back up of how to get to this website. All right. So I've thrown a bunch of terms at you, right? 3 probation statuses. So if everybody wants to drop in the chat, any of those probation statuses. What's the probation status where you have no concerns and everything's fine? What's that called? One. Do I need to go back? I really want to make sure you kind of get a baseline again. I'm trying not to get overly detailed, but I do think this is an important thing to know. Continued, awesome. Continuing accreditation. Yes, thank you. What is kind of it's a new program. They look like they're going to be okay, but we don't have final information on them. What's that one called? Provisional. Yep, thank you. And then the one where you're going to have to do some more investigation is probation. Yeah. Does a school on probation, are they still allowed to admit and graduate students? Yeah. Yes, they are. Okay. Okay. So you find your school list. And I think this is really relevant for our students because a lot of our students are interested in Wayne, in University of Detroit Mercy, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to look at their program website. They should be publishing information that updates you about their probation status. I was poking around, I think University of Detroit Mercy yesterday, and I could find information about their accreditation and the fact they are supposed to be transparent about the fact that they're on probation so that a student who's interested in their school can find it. So that's a first thing to look for. Is the school being open about the fact that they're on probation? The next thing you want to do, I encourage this anyhow, but this is definitely a condition where you want to go to an information session. Okay. You want to go to that meeting where a school is talking about their curriculum. They're kind of sales pitches. They're also very informational because they will tell you things like prerequisites. But this is also your opportunity to ask questions relative to their probation status. Okay. I've given some example questions here. Can you update us on the probation status? Can you give us a sense of what those underlying issues were and how your program is resolving them? And asking, when is the next program review? Okay. Because you're trying to educate yourself about if this is a good risk. Guys, there were 70 students this year that were admitted to between Oakland and Western. There were 70 students who were admitted to programs that couldn't attend because the programs shut down the application year. All right. So I want you to work on being educated about what's going on. Yeah. What I don't want you to do, I don't want you to rely on Reddit, to rely on what alum says is or isn't happening, to rely on, my cousin's PA told me that X, right? Because it's not from the source. But these are the kinds of things, again, you can do a little digging and to see how a school handles it. If a school seems to respond to your questions, and they are organized and they seem to have an effective plan in place and kind of can explain how they are fixing the problem, great. If they are a little baffled, if they are not prepared to address that question, even from an audience member, I would have concerns about their ability to address that fundamental issue if they're not able to talk about it, right? So these are just things I want you to do to get educated about the process. I know it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to consider. It's important. Here are some reliable resources, okay? They are good for different things, but these are always going to be, if we're talking about going straight to the source, these are the kinds of places I want you to go. The PAEA website. This has a directory that's got all the programs in the country. I think it can be great for looking at regionality. You will also find a lot of education because they're responsible for some of the ongoing education that happens with PAs. So you may find informational articles that are useful also published on that site. CASPA, so the Centralized Application Service for PA, they have a help page. I think it's a good resource for how to navigate the application portal. It's maybe not where you're going to find out anything about program accreditation, but it is a good resource to learn more about the process. Okay. You can always schedule an advising appointment. Amanda, Doug, and I are here to help you think through some of this as you make your school list. Some of the information that I was able to share with you is because I attended a meeting at Michigan State a couple weeks ago, and we had an opportunity to hear from the program director at MSU about this topic. And so that's one of those situations where we may have the ability to reach out and get more information from our professional networks if you've got questions. And then finally, if you've got questions specifically about Wayne State's PA program, you can email paadmit@wayne.edu to get those questions answered. Now, I think one of the things that comes up is this sort of question or maybe assumption that because the school is on probation, they will not have very many applicants. And actually, that's not turning out to be true. I talked to somebody at the Wayne State program yesterday, and they actually had about 130 more applications in 2024 than they did in 2023. So I think they saw a little bit of a dip in 2023 when they first went on probation, but as close as they get closer to, and can kind of show that they're making progress to remediating that, and hopefully we'll be coming off probation in March, we've seen a jump back up. So even probation schools might still be getting a large number of applicants. So just know that. Okay. There's a couple questions in the chat, so I'm going to pause there. And the first question, if someone gets into Wayne, is there a chance they might need to reapply if there's if a school loses their accreditation, since that's what, yeah. So, right. So I'm going to take this, not just Wayne, right? But any school that's on probation. If you get into a school and for some reason they lose their accreditation, would you need to reapply? Potentially, yes, you would. The next question, when starting the CASPA application, am I able to always change the year I would like to apply in? So CASPA rolls over annually in late April. If you are starting CASPA, my recommendation, if you want to start a dummy account, a test account, and go in and play around with it a little bit, just to get familiar with the portal, go ahead and do that. You're not going to hit submit. You're not going to, nothing's really going to get processed. You're not going to send transcripts. You're just kind of going to get comfortable with the software. That's fine. And you could do that now, even if you're not planning to apply for the next year or two. But you can't go into CASPA with like a drop-down menu where you can then select the year of application. I don't know if that's answering the question appropriately, but you can always decide that you're not ready to apply in a given year and wait. You can even submit your application and then withdraw it. I hope if that didn't clarify the answer to that question, please either unmute to rephrase it, or I'm happy to try again. I think one thing I'm wondering is, was this helpful information at the right level of depth? Oh, and I'm going to go back. Does anybody want to see that QR code again? Okay. I'm going to go back to the QR code. If you want to go to that ARC-PA website, that is the QR code. You guys are all really welcome. Please let me know if there's more questions, because I want you to, not to overwhelm you, but to make sure you've got the information you need to make smart decisions. Okay. Okay, so one question, the first question, if you have a last prereq question, can that hold me back from starting to apply? Yes, depending on where you want to apply. Just like all things PA, each program has different rules around whether or not the prerequisites can be outstanding, and you should know what those rules are for each program you're selecting before you hit submit. Okay. Every year there are students that apply to Wayne State who are planning a prerequisite after their prereq deadline. And those people get automatically denied after they've spent their money. So make sure you know the rules on that. And then the recording will go up on YouTube. And there will be a post. It's probably going to take us a few days, but there will be a post on Instagram. If you follow us on Insta, it is WSU Pre-Health. I can also send it to Noor. I can send Noor a link once it's up so that anybody who's in the PPAS, she can share it with them as well, if that would be helpful. Question, do PA schools in Michigan accept some science prerequisite classes online? Does it matter? Can they also take some of the online patient care experience? So online science classes would be dependent on school by school, right? Whether or not they've got a specific rule around prereqs. Where that can be a little challenging is if you take a class in a semester in which it's basically only offered online, like for example, Bio 3200, several times in the last couple of years, it's only been offered remotely. So the question would be, first of all, your Wayne State transcript doesn't state that it was online. There's no notation that tells you it was an online course. So it's not readily apparent. And if it was an issue, the question that I would have as a follow-up to a program would be, if I can prove to you that the only way I could take that class was to take it online, would you accept it? Medical lab science is another one. Medical lab science is only offered online here, and that's the case at many other schools. So some online patient care experience. I'm not sure what you mean by online patient care experience. Anything that's online, PCE, I would imagine would be healthcare experience as opposed to patient care. I'm thinking like a suicide hotline, for example. That would be healthcare experience, but not direct patient care, typically. Other questions? You're welcome. I'm going to stop recording.